When JR was around 4 or 5 years old, her parents had broken up. So she remained living in the house with her mother, Sandra Elizabeth Gaines. Soon after, Gaines would introduce her now 5-year-old daughter to her new boyfriend, Robert Cordwell Flowers. Sometime really shortly after that meeting, Flowers moved in. He at the time was 10 years younger than Gaines. Now in the articles I've read, they have Gaines listed as 39 and Flowers listed as 29. So even if they were 2 or 3 years younger when these situations were happening, they are 10 years apart from each other in age. Now in 2007, Gaines began to lose weight. She started to look very different. She was having mood swings. She was abusing Adderall and Lortabs. Now, Adderall, to my recollection, is a drug that treats ADHD. It's a stimulant. It is for focusing and awareness. Normally, students will take Adderall. Lortabs is a pain pill that is highly addictive if not taken for the purposes that it needs to be taken for if it's abused. And so she was taking both these pills. She was combining them. Now, did it make her do what she is said to have done? I doubt it. As soon as Flowers moved in with Gaines and her 5-year-old daughter, the sexual molestation would start to take place. They would both, I'm going to refer to them as the couple. The couple would touch all over this little girl's breasts and touch her private area. That went on for the next 2 to 3 years. That happened. When JR turned 8 years old, full intercourse, full vaginal sex had started to take place. In actuality, it was raping. She was only 8 years old. So Flowers was raping this 8-year-old girl, and the mother Gaines, she was allowing it to happen. She actually was there, sometimes touching on JR while this was occurring. So in 2012, when full intercourse, full raping is occurring, Flowers would always offer JR wine. They would even watch adult content on his cell phone, and sometimes they would watch the pornographic movies on his computer. And he was basically showing her that it's people that are having sex. You know, it's a normal thing. JR also details an instance where Gaines had forced her out of her room into Gaines's bedroom. Flowers was underneath the covers. He was naked. At this point, he was intoxicated and he was semi-unconscious. He was very drunk. And Gaines had made JR take off all her clothes and tried to make them to have sex while Flowers couldn't even get an erection. So basically, the mom, what a mom, but basically Gaines, she was 100% involved in what was going on in that household with her daughter. So for the next 6 years, rapings would occur at least 2 to 3 weeks. It only stopped when the couple ended their relationship. That is when it stopped. Shortly after, when the couple ended their relationship, JR was outside and she was waiting for a school bus when Flowers had drove by. He offered her some money. Then he told her to get in the car, in which she did. He drove her to his house where he now stayed with his current girlfriend. I don't believe she was in the house, but his current girlfriend and him resided there, and he took JR back to this house where she said he would put his private part inside her vagina. So basically he had sex with her again there. JR's father was coming into town and she wanted to tell her father what had happened. I think in actuality she wanted to tell her father what had happened just with Flowers, of what he did. This was the first time I believe Flowers had done this when Gaines wasn't around. So she was trying to figure out a way she could tell her dad what had happened. So she confided in a teacher. On April 24th, 2013, the victim, JR, had told her teacher that her mother's boyfriend had been abusing her since she was 5. The teacher then would, of course, tell the principal, where the principal would call the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office, and then the Department of Family Services were all notified. Detective Hugh Davis was on the case. He would speak to Robert Flowers. He advised Flowers of his Miranda rights, but he actually admitted to the molestation and rape. Now, Flowers thought that Davis was going to be on his side, especially when Davis found out that Gaines was also a part of this. So everyone was arrested. The boyfriend, Robert Flowers, was arrested. The mother, Sandra Gaines, was arrested. And the children was, of course, taken into family services until all this was sorted out. During the trial, the evidence I couldn't even really read it all. I didn't really want to absorb that much information. I just couldn't, but it's online for anyone who wants to view it. But I'm going to tell you what I read. The trial evidence was, I'm sure, hard for JR, but she went through it. She spoke of how her mother and Flowers would both take turns recording the sexual abuse that was going on their cell phones. Now, their cell phones was garnished and there was no videos that had JR on them. But how many times in 7 years have you changed your cell phone? 14 times? At least 7. You almost have to get a new phone every year. So there was no evidence on the phone. That really didn't mean anything. They had a medical examiner say that they had checked JR, but she had no signs of sexual abuse. That's what a medical examiner said. However, just remember, Flowers had confessed to what he did, him and his ex-girlfriend. The sad part of all of this, and it's crazy because when I went on the Facebook page in 2019, I saw a picture, a profile picture of who probably is a victim and a second child who was very much younger than the victim. And it was under the mother's profile. And she has a lot of God quotes on her profile. And it's hardly nothing on the page but the picture of Gaines' children. Yes, children, plural. Gaines actually had another daughter that is 7 years younger than JR. JR was also afraid that this was going to happen to her younger sister. So this little girl had a lot on her mind. What happened to her, what could happen to her sister. She actually said she didn't want to get hit or get fussed at when she told someone what happened. She did not even realize the magnitude of what was going to happen to these people. She didn't know that what they did was so disgusting, incestuous, perverted, pedophilic, that they were going to be put away for quite some time. She didn't even have that in her little mind. She just thought she might get hit or fussed at. That was it. She didn't know, really, what these people had did to her was absolutely sickening. Now, in court, when the bus stop situation came up, Flowers had said, he saw her at the bus stop. She missed her bus. He brought her back to his house, gave her breakfast, and took her to school. That's what he said that had happened. He said no sexual intercourse had happened that day. But mind you, he did say that all the sexual intercourse had happened before, since she was 5 years old. The mother, Gaines, has taken no responsibility for any of this. She has said that she had said that she was not guilty for any of this, that she wasn't involved in any of this. And she's lying, because even when Flowers and Gaines had broken up, she still continued the sexual abuse on her own with her own daughter. Amazing. Gaines was saying that this little girl was making this up because she wanted to live with her father. That is why. She did all this, really? Because she wanted to live with her father? Adding in the molestation and adding in the actual raping, this girl was almost pretty much abused for like 10 years by these disgusting people. And Gaines wanted to take no responsibility for what had happened. And she knew that it had happened. Even in her mugshots, which is the same mugshots from years ago, even in her mugshots, she doesn't seem like she even really cares, like she's still on Adderall and Lortabs. I don't know. But this case was just so sickening, and it's really not much even to say on it. This case really wasn't even talked about, but I am glad to say that both, since they wanted to do everything together as a couple, Gaines and Flowers, they got matching sentencing. They will be in prison for the rest of their lives, so they will never, ever get out again. And if you ever look on any of the Louisiana versus so-and-so, you can see all of the court documents. That's what I had looked under. If there's any way I can link it somehow on this, I will link it. But it's Louisiana versus Gaines, Louisiana versus Flowers, and you can see everything that I talked about and much, much more that I didn't even want to talk about, because you pretty much get the gist of the story. This little girl is 18 years old now. Hopefully she is somewhere flourishing if she ever comes across this video, I am so sorry that this happened to you. You did not deserve this. I hope that she's able to sit and talk with someone, and I hope that she receives counseling, and counseling shouldn't stop when she's a certain age. She can get counseling if she wants to for a good portion of her life. It's nothing wrong with that. I hope she's well. I hope she's okay. And I hope that she understands that her mother was a very, very sick woman inside her mind, and even sicker inside her heart to let this occur, because she was the one behind this. And Flowers was the pig he was to go along with it too. But just remember, JR, she saved her little sister's life, because trust and believe that was a life that her little sister, who they're referring to as CF, was looking forward to. I'm so glad these two pieces of shit got life in prison.